Hey, what's up, class? Hope you are all doing well. Hopefully you are safe and sound and taking care of yourselves. Today I'm going to give you a little mini lesson on integers. Integers is an algebraic concept that you have been taught before, but some of you might be a little rusty, and so we need to get the cobwebs off. And so we're going to go back to the basics here. This is integers is a concept that you need to be able to do pretty well to be successful in Math 1. You can use a calculator at home, but you're really going to need to be able to do it on paper and in your head. Using a calculator will only help you so much in this class. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and we're going to go through a little PowerPoint lesson. You have these handouts, so you should be taking notes on the handout. So let me go ahead and pull this up for you. And here we go. Okay, so I'm calling this Math Basics Review Part 1, going back to the basics, basic training. So in this lesson, we are going to review and utilize the math concepts of operations with integers. So adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing of positive and negative numbers. And so we're going to start off with multiplying and dividing. Those rules tend to be a little easier. Most of you probably have these rules memorized. If you don't, in just a moment, I'm going to give you an easy strategy to help you. So, but let's go through these, see if you can remember them before I say them. So on this first rule, when you're multiplying a positive number times another positive number, that is going to be what? It's going to be positive. If you multiply a positive number times a negative number, then that's going to be negative. And then if you have two negatives, a negative times a negative, what's that going to be? It's going to be a positive or a negative. It is positive. Okay, so these are your basic rules. This middle rule right here, you could have a negative first and then a positive. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm going to show you a quick strategy, really easy strategy, especially when you're taking a quiz or a test and you feel like you're a little nervous and you don't want to forget the rules. My students use this strategy all the time, and I call it the tic-tac-toe strategy. So you've played the game tic-tac-toe before, so what you're going to do is draw yourself a little tic-tac-toe grid, a little game board, and we are going to go diagonal down from top to bottom here, and in each of these we are going to put a positive symbol. So I'm going to put 3 positive symbols. Now in every other little box I'm going to put a negative. So let me fill those in with negatives. Now here are your rules. So let me show you how it works. So this is what's going to equal. So over here you've got a positive times a negative. That's going to give you a negative answer. Here, if you have a negative times a positive, that's going to give you another negative answer. And then if you've got 2 negatives, that's going to give you a positive. The only rule that's not up there is a positive times a positive is a positive. Okay, so these are multiplying and dividing. Let's do a few practice problems together. You have these on your handouts. And so you got 4 practice problems. And just a reminder that multiplying and dividing, the rules are the same. So if you are, it's the same for both multiplying and dividing. Okay, adding and subtracting is a little different. We'll get to those in a moment. So let's take a look at number 1. We've got a negative times a positive. So you can either think about your tic-tac-toe, or if you have it, so negative times a positive, it's going to be a negative answer, and that would be negative 15. Okay, here we're dividing. The rules still stay the same. We have a positive, and then we've got a negative, so 36 divided by negative 4, positive divided by negative is going to be negative 9. Forgot to put the little circle there, negative 9. Okay, here we've got a negative times, right? Parentheses means times. A negative times a negative. So a negative and a negative, we know our answer over here is going to be positive. So now let's see if we can do this in our head. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 4 is 8. So we should have 2.8, positive 2.8. Okay, and then on the last one here, number 4, we have a negative divided by a positive. Negative 45 divided by a positive 5 is going to give us negative 9. Okay? All right, so those rules are not too difficult. Most of you probably have those squared away, but tic-tac-toe is a great strategy. Like I said, my students use it all the time. I'll see it on their tests. They write it out just so they can remember. Okay, these are a little bit more difficult. You're adding and subtracting rules. All right, so what are those rules? Many teachers have different strategies. Like, for example, when the signs are different, what are you supposed to do when the signs are the same? If you know those rules, or you think you know those rules, I'm going to give you a minute just to write them down on your handout. But for many students, trying to remember these rules is really frustrating. And so take a moment, see if you remember those rules. Give you a couple of, about 10 seconds. And if you don't remember those rules, have no fear, because I've got a great strategy. Okay, so fear not, I have an even better strategy. I know you try to remember, okay, if the signs are opposite, then do this, and if they're the same, do this. I've got a way better strategy. So some of you have probably seen this before, but it's kind of something I developed, and it works great for my students. So let me teach it to you. It is called the scoreboard strategy. Okay, so scoreboard. So before I actually teach you how to do it with a math problem, I want you to think about the NBA. Okay, so I want you to think about the Lakers versus the Clippers. All right, so just stay with me here. You might be thinking, what in the world is he doing? So let me explain. Okay, and if your parents are peeking and watching this video, maybe they'll get a kick out of this as well. Okay, so I want you to think of the Lakers versus the Clippers. Got the playoffs coming up, and so I want you to think of, they're going to play each other. Okay, so in the first quarter, the Clippers jump out to a big lead, and they score 30, and the Lakers only score 20. So right now, after the first quarter, who's winning the game? Obviously the Clippers, and they're winning by 10 points. In the second quarter, they both score the same number of points in the second quarter, 25 and 25. So they tied here, but here the Clippers were still ahead. So at halftime, right, it's halftime, so the Clippers are leading at halftime. In the third quarter, the Lakers come out and they're kind of on fire, and they score 5 more points in the third quarter. Okay, so if you can do a little quick math, up here was a 10-point difference, but then they scored 5. So the Clippers are still winning by 5. And then in the fourth quarter, let's find out what happens in the fourth quarter. Okay, and you're copying this down on your notes. So in the fourth quarter, the Lakers only score 20, and the Clippers score 35. Okay, so let's find out who won. Let's do some quick math here. So let's add up. So we got 5 and 5, that's 10, 0, carry your 1, and then that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we've got 90, and the Clippers scored 110. Okay, so here's a real tough question for you. So who won the game? Well, obviously the Clippers won. Now, how much did they win by? So to figure that out, you would take these two numbers and you would subtract, and you can see that they won by 20 points. How did we get that? We subtracted. Okay, now what in the world does this have to do with adding and subtracting integers? Well, I'm going to show you. It's called the scoreboard strategy. Okay, so just remember what we just did. We added up all these points, and then we figured out who won the game, and then we subtracted to find out how much they won by. Okay, so now let me show you how this works in a math problem. And again, my students use this all the time. Okay, so here we've got the math problem -6, so this is a negative number, plus 8. Now, some of you are immediately going back to those rules and you're trying to remember, okay, what am I supposed to do if it's, okay, so if you aren't very good at this, then I really want you to use the scoreboard strategy. So the way it works, instead of Lakers versus Clippers, you're gonna draw a scoreboard, but it's gonna be the positives versus the negatives. Okay, now we're just gonna look at each number and we're gonna see where those points go. So this is a -6, so that would go to the negative team. So we're not going to write -6. We're just going to put 6 points to the negative team. So right now they scored 6 points, and then this is a +8. And we're going to put the 8 over here. Now, that's it. There's no more points. The game's over. So now we just look and see who won. Did the positive team win or did the negative team win? So you can see the positives have more points. How many points did they win by? 8 minus 6. They won by 2. And so who won the game? Positives won. And how much did they win by? They won by 2 points. Okay, so there's your answer. +2. That's the answer to the problem. Okay, now that wasn't too difficult. Let's take a look at this next one. It's a little trickier. So we've got -4 minus 7. Now, a lot of you try to remember the rule and you think, oh, I'm supposed to change the sign and then the answer is going to become positive and you're going to get the wrong answer. So watch, let's do scoreboard. Positives versus the negatives. Okay, so now just take your time. Here we go. So this is -4. So who got those points? The negative team. So the negative team got 4 points. Okay, here is a -7. This minus sign is like a negative. So this is -7. Where do those points go? They go to the negative team. Now, the positives did not score any points. They didn't score anything, 0. So we asked the question, who won the game? How much? By how much? Well, you can see that the negatives won the game. They're the only ones that scored points. So they won, and then 4 plus 7 is 11. So your answer is -11. That's your answer. It's not +11. It's not +3. It's not -3. Okay, so just play scoreboard. 4 points to the negative team, 7 points to the negative team. Okay, let's try a couple more. Okay, a little tricky here. So now we just learned multiplying and dividing rules. Here's a negative times a negative. So on problem 7, it's -5 minus -3. So when you have a negative times a negative, the first thing we have to do is change those to positive. So this is -5 plus 3, right? So plus +3. So let's draw our scoreboard. It takes you like 2 seconds to draw the scoreboard. All right, so here's your scoreboard, and now let's just fill in the scoreboard. So this is 5 points to which team? It's going to go to the negative team. All right, now this is now a +3. So where does that go? That goes to the positive team. So now we just look at the score. Game's over. Who won the game? You can see the negatives won. And how much did they win by? They won by 2 points. So we know the negatives won, so go ahead and put your negative sign, and then they won by 2. All right. Okay, here we go. Let's try, this is, I think, our last example here, our last practice problem. Okay, so let's go scoreboard. Hang on. Okay, so here we go, scoreboard. So that's 11 points to the positive team. And then this is plus a negative. Now, the rule here is what's closest to his heart is what he is. So here's a positive, but a negative is closest to his heart. So he's really negative. So this is going to be 6 points to the negative. Then here we go. Here's another plus a negative, but it's really a negative number. It's as closest to his heart. So that's going to be -7, which will be 7 points to the negative team. And then this is -5. This is really a negative. This is not a positive number. This is -5. So that's going to be 5 points to the negative. Now, let's just look and see who won the game. There's a lot of points over here. What is 6 plus 5? 6 plus 5 is 11. So those get canceled out. This is 6 and 5 is 11, and that cancels this out. So there's no points here, and that means the negative team won. Who won? The negative team. And how much did they win by? They won by -7, or they won by 7 points. The negative team won the game by 7, and that is your answer. Okay. All right. So once again, I'll go through that one So you've got 11 went to the positive team, 6 went to the negative, 7 more went to the negative, 5 more went to the negative. So we add all of these up. This 6 and 5 cancel out over here, and you're left with 7 points. The negative team won the game, and they won by 7 points. In this problem here, the negative team won the game, so that's why we have a negative. And how much did they win by? They won by 2 points. Okay. All right. Go ahead and write yourself a tip or reminder. So we went through positive and negative numbers multiplying and dividing. And then we also did positive and negatives where we're adding and subtracting. So go back through your notes and write yourself a tip. And then you have a handful, I think I put 9 practice problems. Now for today, if you want to get full credit, you need to draw the scoreboard on your paper for each problem in order to receive full credit. So in the future, if you don't want to use the scoreboard, that's your prerogative, but the scoreboard strategy works great. Okay, so, but if you want to get full credit on this assignment, you need to show me the scoreboard strategy for this assignment. Okay, all right, and that's it. That's all. So hopefully that makes sense. We will practice it in class. I will be using scoreboard strategy. Like I said, you're going to be able to use a calculator, but when we start solving equations and we have variables involved, it gets a little too complicated to be using your calculator. Your calculator has a hard time doing variables. So you're going to need to be able to use that scoreboard strategy, and also eventually you'll be able to do it in your head. The more you use the scoreboard strategy, eventually you'll be able to see the scoreboard. Instead of writing it out, you'll be able to see the positive team, the negative team, and you'll be able to see the scoreboard. Okay, so hope that helps. Like I said, do those practice problems, and then we will go over more problems in class. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Maybe